I was just wondering how you're going to be, at 9:30 tomorrow morning. Are you prepared?
I'm prepared. I'm all right. I'm all right with it.
She's been called the hooker.
He kills women and children.
A poor girl turned prostitute. A survivor turned serial killer. 7 men dead. 1 woman blamed. But was she really a monster? Or a victim of life itself? Let's dive into the shocking story of Aileen Wuornos. Low dramatic tone. She wasn't born a monster. She was made by pain, rejection, and years of violence. In late 1980s Florida, police began finding men shot dead along lonely highways. Their killer wasn't who anyone expected. She was a woman. Her name was Aileen Wuornos. This is the story of a broken soul who turned her rage into revenge. The highway killer who terrified America. Childhood and early life. Aileen Carol Wuornos was born on February 29, 1956, in Rochester, Michigan. Her father, Leo Pittman, was a convicted child molester who hanged himself in prison before Aileen even knew him. Her mother abandoned her at 4 years old. From that moment, she belonged to no one. Raised by her grandparents, life offered her no comfort. Her grandfather was an alcoholic who beat her. By age 11, Aileen had begun trading sexual favors for food and cigarettes. She never learned love, only survival. At 14, she became pregnant after being raped by a family friend. The baby was given up for adoption, and she was expelled from school. She started living in the woods near her hometown, sleeping in abandoned cars, stealing to eat. Music slightly fades. The world had already abandoned Aileen Wuornos, and she began to abandon it back. Drifting and marriage. By her late teens, she drifted from town to town, hitchhiking across America. She was rough, loud, and unpredictable, but inside, desperate for belonging. Then she met a wealthy 69-year-old man, Louis Fell, and for a brief moment, life looked different. Fell married her, gave her a home, a chance, but violence followed her like a shadow. Bar fights, arrests, broken promises. Within weeks, the marriage collapsed. Aileen was back on the road, a wanderer again, chasing something she could never hold. Arrival in Florida. By the early 1980s, Aileen found herself in Florida. Hot, humid highways, cheap motels, truck stops where everyone had secrets. She lived off prostitution and small crimes, bouncing between bars and jail cells. And then one night, she met a woman who would change everything, Tyria Moore. Tyria worked as a hotel maid. Together they became inseparable, lovers, partners, survivors. But they were broke, addicted, and always on the edge. Aileen promised she would take care of them both, no matter what it took. Music, dark pulse building. That promise would soon turn deadly. The first murder. December 1989, Aileen met Richard Mallory, a 51-year-old electronics store owner. They drove into the woods. Hours later, only one came out. 2 days later, Mallory's body was found. He had been shot several times with a .22 caliber pistol. His car was missing. Aileen told investigators later, "He tried to rape me. I had to defend myself." But the pattern that followed didn't look like self-defense. It looked like a storm she could no longer control. The pattern emerges. In the months that followed, men kept disappearing. Always along the highway, always middle-aged, traveling alone. Bodies were turning up in remote woods, shot multiple times. The police had no suspect, no witness, no motive. But they noticed one strange detail. The killer took the victims' cars and personal belongings. Whoever it was, wasn't just killing. They were surviving off their victims. Closing transition. By the end of 1990, the Florida highways had become a trail of blood and fear. The killer had a name, whispered only in the bars and motels of Daytona. Aileen Wuornos. Next, we follow her path of death, the police manhunt, and the betrayal that ended it all. The killing trail. Opening recap. By 1990, Florida's highways had become hunting grounds. Aileen Wuornos was on the move, with her pistol, her rage, and her secret companion, Tyria Moore. To outsiders, she was just another drifter. But to the men she met on those lonely roads, she was death waiting behind a smile. The murders begin. After Richard Mallory came David Spears, a construction worker. On May 19, 1990, his naked body was found in a remote area of Citrus County, shot 6 times. Next was Charles Carskadden, a part-time rodeo worker. June 6th, his body was discovered along Highway 19, riddled with bullets. Peter Seams, 65 years old, a retired merchant seaman. He picked up 2 hitchhikers, a rough-looking blonde woman, and another woman with short dark hair. Weeks later, Seams vanished. His car was found crashed and abandoned. Inside, Aileen's fingerprints. And the killings continued. Troy Burris, Dick Humphreys, Walter Antonio, each one found shot multiple times. Each one left to rot in the woods. The police realized they weren't dealing with random crimes. There was a pattern. A single .22 caliber revolver tied every murder together. A serial killer was on the loose. And soon they would learn that killer was a woman. The investigation, Florida law enforcement formed a multi-agency task force. They collected evidence, analyzed bullet casings, and compared stolen vehicles. Every lead pointed toward two women traveling together. One blonde, one brunette. Witnesses at pawn shops reported a woman pawning men's belongings, watches, tools, cameras. Her ID name, a fake one, but her face, unforgettable. Police sketches began circulating in newspapers. Motel clerks remembered them. Bar owners recognized them. The walls were closing in. The crash, July 1990. Two women crash a car belonging to missing victim Peter Seams. Locals see them fleeing the scene, bloodied but alive. Police recover the car. Inside, bloody palm prints. Outside, discarded beer cans, a map, and lipstick-stained cigarette butts. Those prints would later confirm what the detectives feared. Aileen Wuornos had struck again. The betrayal. By early 1991, police finally located the pair. Hiding out in Daytona Beach, Aileen was caught at a biker bar called The Last Resort. Tyria Moore was taken into custody separately. Police made Tyria an offer, cooperate, and she would walk free. Betray Aileen, the woman who claimed to love her, or face prison herself. For 3 long days, Tyria called Aileen from a hotel room wearing a hidden wire. Her voice trembled as she begged, "Lee, they're going to blame me. Please tell the truth." And then, Aileen's voice broke through the static. Tired, defeated, honest. "Okay, Ty, I did it. I killed them all." That taped confession sealed her fate. The arrest. January 9th, 1991. The manhunt was over. The world's first modern female serial killer was in handcuffs. At first, she told detectives she killed in self-defense. But later, her story shifted. Sometimes she claimed she loved killing. Sometimes she wept in regret. Either way, the truth was buried somewhere between pain and madness. But what came next would turn Aileen Wuornos into a national obsession. A media storm, a courtroom circus, and finally, her end. Trial madness and the final words. Opening scene. Slow, somber tone. January 1991, the woman who haunted Florida's highways was finally behind bars. But as her mugshot spread across every newspaper, the world wasn't ready for what came next. Because this was no ordinary killer. This was Aileen Wuornos, America's damsel of death. Camera flash sounds, reporters shouting. She didn't hide. She didn't beg. She stared right into the lens and said, "Yeah, I killed them. I robbed them. I'd do it again." Music fades into cold silence. The trial begins. The trial began in January 1992 in Daytona Beach, Florida. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, TV cameras, curious locals. Everyone wanted to see the monster who looked so ordinary. Sound, gavel hits, murmuring crowd. Aileen was charged with 7 counts of first-degree murder. The prosecution painted her as a cold-blooded predator, a prostitute who lured men, then executed them for money. The defense told a different story. A woman abused her whole life, fighting back against men who tried to rape her. But it wasn't enough. On January 27, 1992, the jury found her guilty of first-degree murder. 2 days later, she was sentenced to death. Dramatic music rise. Aileen smiled. "I was raped." "You're killing a raped woman," she shouted as officers led her away. Brief silence, fade to ambient prison sounds. Inside the prison walls, Aileen was sent to Florida's Broward Correctional Institution, death row. Locked in isolation 23 hours a day, she slowly began to unravel. Her letters became stranger. Her interviews turned chaotic. She claimed the prison was poisoning her food, torturing her with sonic pressure, and controlling her mind. Sound, echoing footsteps, flickering light hum. In 1995, she met a born-again Christian woman named Arlene Prowley. Arlene claimed she had been told by God to reach out to Aileen. The two became close, even calling each other mother and daughter. But even that relationship couldn't save Aileen from herself. The years of trauma, drugs, and fear had consumed her. Soft piano background. Reporters visited her often, fascinated by her contradictions. Sometimes she was calm, polite, and articulate. Other times, she exploded into violent rants about aliens, conspiracy, and God's vengeance. The world saw a woman torn between humanity and horror. Hollywood came knocking. Documentaries, talk shows, interviews. Everyone wanted a piece of her story. Aileen became both villain and victim, a mirror reflecting America's obsession with violence and fame. Her lawyers filed multiple appeals, arguing that her mental state made her unfit for execution. But Aileen refused. She told the court, "I want to die. I'm tired of being tortured in here." In 2002, after 12 years on death row, the court granted her wish. Her final appeal was denied. The execution. October 9th, 2002, Florida State Prison. Aileen Wuornos, age 46, walked into the execution chamber. She looked calm. Her last words shocked everyone. "I'll be back. With Jesus, like Independence Day and on the mothership." At 9:47 a.m., she was pronounced dead, executed by lethal injection. Fade in soft, haunting music. Outside, reporters scribbled notes. Inside, a woman who had once been a frightened child. An abused runaway, a killer, was gone. Legacy and reflection. Aileen Wuornos remains one of the most controversial figures in American crime history. Was she a born killer? Or a woman broken by a world that never gave her a chance? Movies, books, and documentaries turned her into a dark legend. Charlize Theron even won an Oscar for portraying her in Monster, 2003. But behind the fame and fear lies a deeper question. How many Aileens are out there, unseen, unheard, waiting to break? In the end, her story isn't just about death. It's about survival, trauma, and the thin line between victim and killer. This was the story of Aileen Wuornos, the monster, the outcast, the forgotten woman.